When there is a rationale, as there is right here in this room with this organization, it gives you a reason to get up in the morning. It gives you a reason to visit diners and living rooms and union halls. It gives you a reason to listen to America's stories and then to repeat them and then to get up the next day and do it all over again. This rationale, this struggle, is frankly a rage against arrogance, against callousness, against greed. In this splendid setting, we are reminded that we live in an immensely wealthy society. But it's a society in which the top 300,000 wage earners earn more than the bottom 150 million. A society of wealth and a society of poverty. A society that is not as humane as the founding documents we proudly recite. The reference to Nelson Mandela before was not an accident. We live in a kind of wealth apartheid, a government purchased by the wealthy that serves Wall Street, even when Wall Street's interests are such that they hurt the interests of Main Street. We have a country that is complacent about the creation of a permanent underclass, largely an underclass of color, while paying lip service to words like equality and opportunity. It was, and it seems like it was, a century ago when Teddy Roosevelt said, "There is not in the world a more ignoble character than the mere money-getting American, insensible to every duty, regardless of every principle, bent only on amassing a fortune." Well, we're back to an era of economic royalists. A country made great by men and women who worked with their hands now debases and ignores them and celebrates instead the investment banker, the money changers, while holding a Bible which would teach them otherwise as a sword against gays and lesbians, against women, and even against science itself. The media hyperventilates over the excesses of wealthy white women right here and ignores the plight of poor African American women in my home state of North Carolina. If we focused as much attention on these women as we have in just the last day on Paris Hilton, we would have ended poverty. A CEO in the oil industry earns over 500 times what a worker in that same industry earns. An idle investor pays a lesser share of his income in taxes than his secretary pays, who opens the mail containing his dividend checks. There are 37 million Americans, about the number of every man, woman, and child in the state of California, living in poverty, and 15 million of them live in deep poverty, earning for a family of three less than $7,800 a year, here in America. 15 million. The poor are viewed as shamed rather than a cause for national shame for the rest of us. Outrageous wealth and an overworked, underpaid underclass. It looks a lot like Teddy Roosevelt's America. But of course, without Teddy Roosevelt in the White House to deplore it. In fact, quite the opposite. The White House has led the charge against working people in their own class war. The late, great Molly Ivins once wrote that if there was class warfare, that war was long over, and it was a massacre. A genocide to which there have been words of acknowledgement, as there have in Darfur, but as with Darfur, no meaningful action. And I'm so tired of political rhetoric on these injustices. There is a peculiar arrogance of those who would use the words of rage, of economic injustice, while practicing the politics of capitulation. Hal Crothers' call for a 21st century Robin Hood is oft repeated, but this time as a Hollywood set. All facade, no guts. The hard work of developing bold solutions and honesty about the sacrifice and cost necessary to realize them, those are the guts we need. We don't need more rhetoric. I personally haven't any time for rhetoric anymore, and I don't think the people who count on us have time for it either. The single mothers John has met who work 2 jobs and still live in poverty, they don't have time. The mothers who shared stories of children serving in Iraq and who simply want to see their sons and daughters come home. Someone else ships out today, someone else's deployment is extended today. They don't have time. Thousands of women who face my same diagnosis but have no hope of receiving the same quality care. They certainly don't have the luxury of time. Giving up on the campaign, on the platform to speak out, feels too much like giving up on them. All of us who believe in justice, all of us who believe in America America that should be a moral, not just a military leader in the world, have an obligation to speak out. As Martin Luther King said, there are times when silence is betrayal of yourself and of all humanity. Silence is betrayal on the war in Iraq. I am monumentally disappointed in the silence that emanated from Washington on the recent vote to continue funding without timetables for withdrawal. At the very moment when we needed leadership on one of the most important issues on the entire planet, we got silence. We needed uncompromising rage, and we got silence. We needed courage, and we got silence. And that silence was, have no doubt about it, a betrayal of the soldiers, of the voters in 2006, of humanity and morality. Speaking of morality, poverty is one of the great moral issues of our time. I said earlier, 37 million Americans live in poverty. There are 300 billion people, or 3 billion people around the world who live on less than $2 a day. 15 million of the people living in poverty in this country are children. How we respond says something about the character of us as a country. Now, there are many reasons why we should be ending poverty in America. Poverty drains our economic and our social resources. It taxes our cities. It allows our rural communities to wither. But for us, the only real reason we need is that it's wrong. The fact that no one talks about it, that in the presidential debates you've heard so far, no one asks about it, all that does is confirm for us our obligation to continue speaking out. And we need to rid ourselves of immoral language and the mindset that goes with it. Two words that should never be used together, working poor. And yet they trip off our tongues as if they had no moral implication. In America, no one should work full-time and live in poverty. On poverty, as with Iraq and global warming or universal health care, silence is betrayal. It is time, as John says, for us to be patriotic about something other than war. Your organization understands this and embraces the responsibility to speak out and, furthermore, to take action. Leadership is about judgment and moral clarity, both of which have been absent for too many years. Leadership is about action. It's about admitting failures and taking corrective action, which has also been missing. It is about vision and principle. It is really not so hard to express your vision if, and this is a pretty big if you happen to have one. And picky me, if you don't have one, move over and let someone serve who does. It is too critical a time for self-promotion. The public needs more from us. Politics may be about candidates, but public service has to have something to do with that word public. Now, despite the size and scope and power of all that stands between us and our possibilities, I am still hopeful. I'm hopeful because that woman in Cleveland, despairing of no health insurance and a lump in her breast, still came up to me, thinking that somewhere, by whispering in the right person's ear, that there could be an answer, a reprieve from the certain death sentence of being uninsured that was levied upon her. I'm hopeful because despite the scare tactics and fear-mongering of this administration, there's still Mike Farrell. There are still people speaking out in protest. I'm hopeful because you're still here. I'm proud to be here with you, proud to stand beside John, proud to stand up for Beverly and for Mary and for Cheryl in Cleveland, proud to stand with my brothers and sisters who suffer from my disease or others. And at the end of my life, whenever that comes, I hope a long time from now, I want to be able to say, I was one of us. Thank you so much.